Hello, and thank you for joining me for the Academic Mentor Orientation for the 2020 class of Albert Schweitzer Fellows here in Alabama. If you're watching this, then I trust you've been invited to be an academic mentor to one of our new fellows. And hopefully today's presentation will give you some more information so that you feel prepared and ready to start the year. So just as an overview, this is kind of how I have our information set up. First, I'm just going to tell you more about our mission, give you some details about the service project that your fellow will be undertaking this year, as well as sort of how the year progresses over time, and then really spend the majority of time trying to focus on the role of mentors, because I know that's what you may have the most questions about. Since this isn't live, I guess there isn't technically a Q&A, but I do have information and advice to share from our outstanding academic mentor from this year, Dr. Julie Prescott, so I will share that at the end as well. So to start off, I'd like to just let you know that our mission is really about preparing this next generation of professionals who will serve and empower vulnerable people to live healthier lives and create healthier communities. And this mission is achieved through like a trifold approach, where it's both about the service that the student conducts through their service project, as well as about opportunities that we try to provide for education and for reflection. So our mission really has two aims. It's obviously to train those future leaders so that they have both skills and a commitment to continuing this work long after their fellowship year. But it's also about ensuring that the service that they provide brings value to the community and creates sustainable change. And I would say that our mentors help us achieve that mission. You are a critical piece of this puzzle. In terms of service, you are going to play some role, although maybe not as extensive as the site mentors, but some role into helping shape their plan and guiding them. Education is something that some of our mentors get involved in, but to a much lesser degree. Reflection, though, is also a piece of this. Each month, the fellow will write a monthly report and send it to not only me, but you and their other mentor. And this is an opportunity for all of us to give them feedback that will hopefully help them just in these professional development skills and also for problem solving. Now you'll notice our mission references, healthier lives and healthier communities. So I think it's important that I, say up front that our program is not just about improving clinical care, that's not the extent of what we mean when we say health. We are really talking about, that complete state of well-being. And we do have projects that are addressing physical needs, but also mental and social well-being. But we also highly value social determinants of health, and all fellows will receive education on this concept. And I would say this is a key learning objective for them as well, in better understanding how the conditions where people, live, work, age, and play impact their health outcomes and their opportunities for health. Some of our projects, though, are very specifically addressing things like financial literacy or educational disparities, things that are maybe not what you would traditionally think of as health. And hopefully, as you look at the variety of topics and see sort of the scope of the fellows themselves, you'll recognize that the diversity of topics, as well as the interdisciplinary nature of the fellows, reflects this sort of broader view of health. So soon we will have this new class added to the website. And so I encourage you to take a look sometime at asfalabama.org/fellows, so that you can go ahead and even now read about what former fellows have done in their projects. And that might give you a better sense too of what the expectations will be on the fellows this year as well. So the service project is obviously one of the primary things that the students are thinking about and working on throughout their year. We do have a couple of general guidelines. One of them is that students must dedicate 200 hours, and this includes time both for planning as well as implementing their project. This has always been primarily a direct service project in the community. In fact, of those 200 hours, we specify that at least 100 of them needs to be implementing their project. And really that just means that we don't want this to be strictly kind of an academic or intellectual endeavor. This is meant to be an applied project. We'll talk in a second about what direct might look like this year. And we're asking them to address an unmet need in the community and either expand something that already exists or to create something new. So they really aren't serving just as a general volunteer who might be plugging into a role that's, been in existence. We are really giving them an opportunity to have to, plan and start something from scratch. And of course, it needs to be mutually beneficial. I would say that if our community agencies don't value it, then we shouldn't be doing it. I'll describe more about how the students receive support from you as well as other mentors. But just so you know up front that you are one of 2 other mentors in addition to myself. So this year we are faced with some new considerations because of COVID. Right now, as I record this, all the social distancing practices are still in effect. And so we've been talking with the fellows about how this might impact their project. We've instructed them to keep following their school guidelines, as well as obviously whatever local health authorities, state, and CDC recommends. So presently, students have not been released back into their community placements, whether those were school internships or clinical rotations, et cetera. And I continue to stay in contact with their various universities to make sure that I know, when those things will be approved. But as of now, I've advised students to speak with their mentors about how to get started with a modified version of their project that allows them to serve clients from afar. And then as we see how the situation changes over time, we can always be less restrictive and allow them to do more face-to-face. So this may mean that they're involved in more capacity building efforts. And when I say capacity building, we've had those projects in the past, and I'll describe 1 or 2, just so that if you haven't already been thinking in this way, maybe it'll open up some ideas. So we had one of our 2016 fellows who was working with a clinic to try and help them institute a social needs screening process as part of their clinics. It was a free clinic who had never really done anything to assess whether or not people needed food assistance, shelter, transportation, any other list of needs. And what they learned after implementing that was that dental needs were actually of great concern. And so the second phase of her project allowed her to then try to figure out what is kind of a way to build a structure in place, both to screen for these needs on an ongoing basis, but also then to refer clients who were found to be in need of any of them, particularly dental care. A project from this past 2019 to 2020 year was helping an agency who wanted to develop a child care center within the shelter. And a lot of her project, therefore, was doing things not necessarily with the clients themselves, but really with the agency as her main recipient, I guess you could say. So Heather's project, she was doing things like space planning and working with accrediting bodies to make sure that fire codes and health standards and all of that were being met. Her deliverables in the end were things like hiring, documents based on creating staffing guidelines, again, fundraising plans, and other things that were going to be necessary to be in place before the agency could actually open the child care center. So kind of comes back to that mutually beneficial for the community question. We know that COVID is changing what people need and therefore what agencies are focused on providing. So we want to be adaptive to this as well. And we just know that it may require some additional conversations right now at this upfront stage. And it may require us to sort of be more adaptable throughout the year. I've also told students that they may have sort of a phase 1 and a phase 2 part of their project. So I would just ask that you also kind of help students think more creatively during this time, and kind of maintain that open mindset and adaptability. So in terms of the structure of our year, it roughly breaks into 3 stages. First is project planning, and that's where students are right now and really where they have been for a few months. Next will come the project implementation, and then at the very end, I try to encourage them to use that last month of the fellowship just for any evaluation and wrapping up that might need to occur. So you'll notice that in just a second, I'm going to talk about our results framework. So I usually encourage fellows to think about their projects finishing by April 1, and that's just, again, so that we have that last month to use as buffer. And so there might be a project that needs to extend through the month of April, but otherwise we would suggest that we aim for most project activities to wrap up by the 1st of April. The distinction between kind of the project planning and project implementation phase is what we call the project plan. And there is a template for this. Fellows have already been working on it, and you may have already been in communication with them about that. But it's a very structured document where they need to identify, again, what the problem is, what the outcome is that they're seeking, who their target population is, the activities they'll undertake to reach that goal, as well as how they will monitor their progress throughout the year. That document is due May 25th, but I do have some people I'm working with providing an extension to that date. Again, COVID and other things have kind of just made us need to be more flexible with that. So our results framework is something that I think makes us unique, and it can be an opportunity for students, I think, to learn a really critical skill. So the crux of this, as you've probably been involved in your work, is just how are we defining success? So we've been challenging them from the outset of the fellowship to think about how will they know that their project has been effective. And we've walked them through this 4-step process. What is the change in behavior that they're seeking with their participants? And then, to what degree of change do they want to see? How many people will change? And then being able to write that up in a more structured statement. We actually began the fellowship this year in January, 3 months prior than in the past. So fellows have already been asked to think in terms of this results or outcomes-based framework. Traditionally, like I mentioned, this does take the form of change in behavior within participants. But if this was a capacity building project, then we would be looking for systems level changes within the organization. So again, we're asking them to think about, what will change for whom, by how much, and by when. And so the project plan is where they're going to explain, how they'll measure those changes. Some people use surveys, others maybe have a documentation form of, that they can collect, something like test scores or medical records. So the last thing I'll say about this is, I could really use your help in helping them think about those early or leading indicators they might see to know that they're on track. A lot of times students want to do like a pre and post, but what that might mean is that they get through their fellowship time and learn that it hasn't been successful. So we want to make sure that we give them opportunities, again, to continue to kind of refine their implementation plan if it's not working. So this is just a big challenge every year, and because every project is different, it might look different, but we will be asking fellows on a monthly basis to report out on how they're progressing towards their goals. And that's really, again, just so that you and I, working collaboratively, can help them identify when something isn't working and to adapt their strategy to something that might be more effective. So this is a list of, roles that an academic mentor traditionally plays. Hopefully you received this from your fellow when he or she reached out to you to ask if you'd be willing to serve. If not, I'm happy to send this in writing to you as well. And it is a part of the project plan, which I'll touch on in a moment. So for academic mentors, you may find that your fellows come to you kind of in spurts. And one of the neediest times that they will have is right now up front, because they're working on their project plan. They're going to want your feedback. I usually say that academic mentors are the ones who are best equipped to think about theory and how it applies to the topic that the fellow is addressing. And the academic mentor is also the person who, if you and the student decide together that IRB approval would be useful for him or her, you would be the one walking them through that. So we as the fellowship do not require them to get IRB approval, because we are not, publishing their data. But sometimes students find that there are opportunities for them to use their fellowship experience more broadly, and faculty are better positioned than we are as a nonprofit to walk them through that process. So again, that would be sort of an upfront, time-consuming task. But after that, I really just instruct them to come to you on an as-needed basis. And so I would say that, just based on my experience so far and what I hear from students, they go to their academic advisors for maybe 4 to 5 hours a year. Some obviously are using them more than that, but others might be a little more hands-off. I will say that I greatly appreciate when mentors interject on the fellows' monthly reports. You'll see that here at the end where it says review the fellows' monthly reports and respond if appropriate. So essentially, this is your opportunity just, again, to give them key advice or even just encouragement. So thank you in advance for looking at those each month, even if all you feel like you need to say is keep up the good work. I'm not going to go through the details of the site mentor's responsibilities, but just know that your fellow has also identified a site mentor, who's someone at their organization that will guide them also in the project planning and implementation. You would see some similarities in the roles, but the site mentor is usually the one who is best able to help them adapt those theories and best practices that you've advised them on to that specific community context. So they're really helping them think about the logistics and the practicalities that they need to consider. So that leads me into sharing some advice from Dr. Julie Prescott, who was selected as this year's Outstanding Faculty Mentor. You see her 4 kind of main points there on the slide, but I would like to say a little bit more. Again, these are Dr. Prescott's words. So she first said that, be sure you have the time to support your mentee before you agree to do it. The projects can be complex, and as with most things, don't always go the way the student plans them. You need to be available for meetings and support often with a pretty quick turnaround, so make sure you aren't so full with other responsibilities that you can't be available. Given what I said above about things not always going as planned, be prepared to help guide your mentee in being flexible problem solvers who can pivot in response to circumstances that may be out of his or her control. Part of learning leadership is to be responsive and adaptable. That comes easier to some than others, so being ready to help students get there is essential. Even better, giving the mentee opportunities to see you do this in your own work is a nice chance to set an example. Make sure that the student project is in your wheelhouse of expertise and experience before you agree to be the mentor. Being a sounding board for ideas and offering opportunities for the mentee to participate in related work or to meet key players that intersect with your work and their project is a great way to support them in gaining confidence and connections. I couldn't imagine mentoring a student project without being really connected to that space. Be a cheerleader. These projects are marathons, not sprints. With ups and downs along the way, the mentee learns perseverance in real-world project work. Helping the mentee see the value in the successes and the challenges will help him or her build resilience and confidence. Celebrating along the way is invaluable. So thank you to Dr. Prescott for that great advice. Now I will say, if any of this either the roles or her advice or anything else I've shared today starts to make you think, wow, I'm not sure I really fully understood this before I signed up. I would love to talk to you more. We of course don't want this to be a surprise to you, and we want you to feel comfortable and confident taking it on. But I'd also like to just say that we do it as a team, and you will not be asked to do it alone. And with that, I would say, resources that will be available to you are, first and foremost, me. I want to make sure you feel comfortable reaching out to me at any time. If there's anything happening with the fellow that you feel like I need to know about or step in and be involved in, you'll see my organization as well as my UAB email address there and a telephone number. We do have some documents that I think will help you know what the fellow is supposed to be doing along the way. The first one being the project plan that does outline those mentor roles, also those monthly reports that the fellow will be sending to us. I conduct a mid-year check-in, so usually like September or early October, I make sure that, I just open up lines of communication with you again and make sure how things are going. And then, we are always open just to collaborating on stories. So as an academic representative, you may know of ways that we can help promote what the fellow is doing through school media sources, whether that's social media, websites, or more. So we just want to be a resource to you throughout the year as well. And with that, I will conclude. Again, you see our website and some of our social media channels that you can follow just to stay up to date on what we're doing. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you taking the time.